Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. Today, we're going to be going through a webinar on how to use the Elastic Stack for application performance monitoring. But first, a couple logistics items. If you can hit that, there we go. The slides, everybody always asks this. The slides and the recording will be available following the webinar. Anyone that has signed up will get a notification when they are available. If you can join us on the chat via IRC, it's hashtag elastic-webinar. Join the chat, ask your questions, and get involved. If you're watching this later, obviously you can't do that part, but you can go ahead and select high resolution in the YouTube video player to make sure that you're actually seeing all the fun little words on the screen. And what I'd like to do is hand it off to AJ. AJ is part of our solution architects team. And I don't know if you want to introduce yourself, AJ, or just start going.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Jamie. My name is AJ Paul. I'm a solutions architect in the Southeast United States for Elastic. I specialize in APM, and I'm really excited here today to talk to you about APM in the context of the Elastic Stack. So for those of you who are interested in APM but weren't familiar with Elastic Stack, I'd like to just spend a minute or two talking about our stack from the top down here. We'll be talking about one of the solutions today, APM, but we do have a number of solutions for organizations to implement using the Elastic Stack. Kibana is our visualization layer where you can do interesting queries and dashboards and visualizations, which we'll see here, as well as menus such as APM, which we'll also look at today. At the heart of Elastic Stack is Elasticsearch, which is a storage and search and analytics engine that stores an immense amount of data and has the ability to do fast queries and searches. Below that is the ingestion layer where we have Beats and Logstash. Beats are lightweight shippers written in Go. We have a couple of them we produce, and there's a number of them that are provided by the company or the community. And then Logstash, which can be looked at as our ETL layer to transform. We have 200 plus inputs that are supported by Elastic. There's obviously a community that produce their own ingestion, and we do some transformation there and send stuff to Elasticsearch. And lastly, there's a couple of deployment options for folks who are interested in the Elastic Stack. Today, you could go out to cloud.elastic.co and sign up for a 14-day evaluation and get Elasticsearch and Kibana. And then if you fall in love with it, like most people do, you can get a subscription with us. Yeah, the other side of that is self-managed, where we take all that goodness from our public cloud and we provide that to organizations to install in their data centers or on their cloud infrastructure, and provide Elastic Cloud as a platform as a service. And then lastly, the standalone installations of this, where you download the packages from elastic.co and install them on your hardware. So let's talk a little bit about application performance monitoring as it relates to the Elastic Stack. So we talked a little bit about what that looks like. So from left to right, this is the ingestion pattern that most people will see. What we're introducing recently is agents to be able to put that into your code base and measure that. And then we have an APM server that adds some curation and additional features to put into Elasticsearch. And then also in Kibana, we have a UI that's available in the basic subscription for Elastic, which provides an application and also provides some dashboards that will show how to integrate with other dashboards if you're using Kibana and Elastic Stack today. So that's pretty much the slideware. We're going to go right into some demoing on the web browser. So this is the default screen for Kibana. If you're not familiar with that, gives you a lot of options to do some exploration of data and kind of helps you get you on your way using Kibana and the Elastic Stack. Today we're going to focus on this menu here called APM. And if you click on this for the first time, what you will be presented with is this page, which is just basically getting started with APM. We're going to walk through that to show you how to do this. So you can select from a multitude of languages that we support. We're just going to kind of go through the example of Mac OS today because I'm running a local instance of the stack on a Mac OS environment. So you can download the zip file, extract it, cd into the directory, and then there's a configuration file, an APM server YML, where you will put the URL, the username and password, if necessary, for your Elasticsearch cluster. And then you'll simply start it using this APM server-e. To validate that that's running, you can simply click this check status button, and you will see that it says you correctly set up the APM server, which means that the APM server is up and running. If you're running it on local, it's probably localhost port 8200, but that it's receiving requests for information and can receive data from agents. Next, we'll talk a little bit about how the agents are configured. We have a number of languages. The one you see on the screen right now is an example of how to get started with Node.js by adding a package using the NPM tool to add this to your packages for your application. It's the Elastic APM Node package. And then an example of how to get this started. So it's a pretty simple, the lines of code you see here is really the extent of what you would need to get started up and running. We're going to call on the APM Elastic or the APM Node agent. And then we'll put the service name in there, which we'll talk a little bit about what that means in the UI in a minute, but it's basically a way to tag your application in the APM UI to say, this is the application I want to put all the metrics underneath. And then a server URL, which I mentioned before, it could be localhost 8200, or depending on where you install it, it could be anywhere in your infrastructure or your landscape. So once that's running on one instance of an application, you could just check the agent status, which is basically to say that is there anything coming into the APM server and subsequently into Elasticsearch. I want to show one more example of a language that is in beta today, and that is Java. There's a lot of excitement around being able to get Java up and running, and the way we implement this is through the use of a Java agent facility within Java by calling the Java agent jar, which is obviously depending on the version you download today. It's in beta, and we'll have a link at the end of this to the repo so you can actually get started by downloading some of that, and then contributing back either comments or suggestions to the APM team on what to add. Or just questions. So, and then there's the service name again, and then basically the same things we saw in the Node.js, being able to say where's the application or APM server, the packages that you would like to instrument, and then your jar, your running application. So once we've kind of covered off on that, the one thing we could do here also is, and this is something that we do with a lot of our beats, we do it with Logstash and certain modules, is we get you started with visualization. So we're going to an indexing pattern. So we just say load Kibana objects. Now I've already done this locally a couple times to prepare for this today, but I can go ahead and confirm overwrite, and it will rewrite all of those objects back out to Kibana. So there's no need to go ahead and figure out how to create some simple dashboards with the visualizations. We already have those out there for you to get started. Okay, so before we go into looking at the APM screen, I want to talk a little bit about what it is we're going to be instrumenting today. And I'm going to show you just an example of an application we use for testing all of the languages that we are developing here at Elastic to be supported. And it's a little application we call OpBeans. This version is running from Node. This is all driven by a Node application, but it's got three different interactions at the top where I can say, show me the dashboard, and it's an inventory program that kind of shows you how many things we have coffee related in our top selling products. We do some math based on some revenue and sales. We can actually look at the products, click on some of these coffee products and look at some of the details around that. We can look at some of the orders that have taken place. We've generated quite a few orders just to show how this works. And all of these applications that we're showing through the various versions are all running with the same backend. It's a simple PostgreSQL database. And then, obviously, lastly, list of customers, right? So we can click on some of the customer data in here too. And all this interaction that I'm doing here, I have in the background running automatically so we can see this stuff in real time. It's been running for about 12 hours, just basically clicking on buttons and doing some interesting things. The other thing I want to show is that when we do this, we like to make sure that it's the same consistent approach to whatever language it is we're developing. And this tab that we're showing here is actually showing the Java version of it being instrumented. So we have both of these up and running on local today. I'm going to go back over to Kibana so you understand kind of what it is we're instrumenting there. And we're going to click on the APM menu now that we've got everything set up and running. And this is by default takes us to our services screen, where as one of the arguments that we added to the configuration of our agents is just the name of the thing that we're going to be measuring. So I'm going to click on, we're going to go from bottom to top, kind of inspecting and looking through these. Let's click on the Node application. And we can see all sorts of charts that have been running for the last, like I said, 12 hours. I think I started it last night around 9 p.m., a little over 12 hours. The first thing I'd like to show is a new feature that's since our last webinar on APM was introduced and is in beta, is the ability to just search on data in all of the calls that are being made during the time frame that we have, which we've selected 24 hours. And I can see the transaction duration. Actually, let's look at response. If you notice the way that the UI is reacting, this is something we introduced into our last version of Elastic 6.4, which is the ability to look at things and provide assistance in terms of like what it is I'm looking for, a search code. So I want to do 200. This will filter down all of those calls to just the ones that were successful, or the ones that were 200. We could pivot to 300s. There doesn't seem to be any right now, or a 500, which I think we've simulated that in some of our testing. And you can kind of search on that there. Another thing we can look at here is something while we're on the subject of new things that have been added to APM is integrations. We're getting to the point where we really want to integrate this facility with some of our premium features. And the first one we'll talk about is anomaly detection. I clicked accidentally here. Let me go back. We have the ability to say, I want to take this average response time and I want to integrate it with anomaly detection. It's just simply adding the job here, and it's that easy. I've actually created it so it is running and has been running. And I want to show in a different instance what that really looks like in terms of finding an anomaly and alerting on it. So I have another environment where I'm running the same opbeans code, but it's running via Python, and we have an anomaly here at around 9 a.m. And it's illustrated by this vertical red marker. And what that really is just a detection of an unusual pattern in the response time. It's none of these metrics. It's actually just the response time. And with all of our anomalies, we score them from 0 to 99. And anything over 75 is something that this UI will detect and actually render a bar there. So you can see that. And with all of our machine learning, everything is actionable. So if you want to send a Slack or a PagerDuty, or you want to send an email, that can happen too as well. All right. All right. So the other integration I wanted to talk about is the integration of Watcher within the context of errors. So if we click on the errors screen, we can see there's a bunch of things that have been happening on the back end. Some of it's intentional just to kind of generate some of this data. But the other interaction or integration is with Watcher, being able to set up an alert on errors. It was my history with Elastic Stack and how I came to start using it. My first use case was that I needed a way to count up all of the thousands of Java stack traces that we're throwing in my logs, but this is a more programmatic or very simplified way to do that, and then send that to alerts. And again, I can send an email or I can send a Slack notification based on the number of errors if I have a threshold that I want to set to. Okay, so that's opbeans and Node and some of the extended features. So this is the beta version of our agent, and we are capturing data much like we were with the opbeans interaction. And I'll click on one of these instances where it's just the orders execution. And I can scroll down here. I can see that we have a distribution of the response times. We could probably go look at this 140 millisecond outlier and inspect what might be unusual with that. Given the limited data set, we probably won't see the real cause in this, but I can actually look at the query as it relates to the functionality behind that call, right? So we can look at that. And so we can look at JDBC from a Java agent perspective. We can inspect servlets, and we also can inspect Spring Boot facilities. So if you have Spring Boot applications, we can look at those as well. Okay, so we've kind of looked a little bit at Java, and the search still is the same there. We can look at response code through all the languages if I want to. I can look at the HTTP version if I wanted to, and I could say 1.1 and show me everything that's 1.1, and that will just give me that one single request. Obviously, if there were more under here that are selected, I could probably filter out those as well. Moving back up, I'm going to get rid of this search here. And the next language that I want to talk about, or instrumentation, is client. I have a program on the back end that is actually acting as a client to interact with the UI. I can show it to you here real quick. It's clicking on things and doing things, right? It's an automated, so it shows the user interaction. But what we really want to show in APM is how we're instrumenting that. So today, if I look at, for example, the dashboard load, again, I get the same charts that you've seen on all the other visualizations, the distribution time or the distribution of response times. But I'm going to scroll down here, and I can see the timings that it took from the time the page loaded, what was being loaded, and then basically a time to when the actual page was interactive. And these are markers, performance markers that we have by default in there when we just inject our ability to monitor the JavaScript. But you can also create custom ones yourself if you want to do more than what we're doing today. All right. So this is actual user interaction and response times that are coming back from the JavaScript on the browser. This is how long I am confirming that it took me this long to load this page, and these are the things that I was taking the most time on, like actually parsing the document took some time too. So dashboard. So next thing I want to show is the ability to take a little bit more outside of this curated UI and integrate it with other data sets. So what we provide is a series of visualizations when we do things like beats, or we do things like modules and Logstash, and APM does the same thing. We provide some dashboards that we can search for in the visualizations area. We created a bunch of them here that you can now put in your own custom dashboards. And what I'm going to show is just an example of how to marry data from APM with perhaps performance information. So I'm going to go over to the dashboard. I'm going to create a new dashboard. We'll call it something later. All right, I'm going to add. I'm going to search for an APM mid screen transactions per minute. And then I'm going to look for metric beat. I'm on local as well. And I think I'll add one more memory usage. What we've done here is we've effectively taken two different pieces of data on the same timeline and put them in a visualization, a single pane of glass. So now that I'm looking at the performance of an application in terms of transactions per minute, and I'm also looking at the health of the systems that are actually running these applications. And when we do that, we can actually start to do like some visual correlation between, oh, there was an uptick in CPU usage, and the application actually was impacted by that. So maybe we need to go out and just get some more CPU behind this particular container that's running. And then once that's done, we can save this away. We can give it a description if we want. We can actually store the time in it. So if I want the last 15 minutes auto refreshed, or if I want a specific, last 60 days, I can add that too and save it away. And now that dashboard's out there for everyone else to see in the dashboard list. And then, if this were in an operations center, I could just collapse this and we can go full screen on it. And you have like a basic network operations center view for this application as well as its infrastructure. Okay, one other thing I wanted to mention here is we go back over to the APM screen, is that developers are really interested in hearing some feedback on how this works. And so, or suggestions for things that we'd like to see added to the stack, right? So we can click on custom feedback and submit a form here, and that will get back to the team that's really interested in hearing feedback from the community. And APM is part of the basic license, so you can download that today and get started. The two things that I showed today that are not available in the basic are those integrations with watchers or setting up alerts, or in the machine learning. So if you want machine learning, that's part of the premium features for the Elastic Stack. Okay, and that really takes us to the end of the demo stuff. I think what we'd like to do is I want to pivot over to my a couple of links in here of interest. There's demo.elastic, well, obviously our website, www.elastic.co. We have a demo.elastic.co. So if you're interested in seeing this without having to set something up on local, there is an APM screen out there that has some visualizations and data, kind of like what you saw today running through it. And then also, there's a survey section. If you're not doing the feedback within the APM, there's a survey section in the GitHub repository for the APM Java agent, which is in beta now and to be released soon. And as always, we encourage you to kind of join some of our meetups in your area. And then lastly, there's our Twitter feed on @Elastic. So we've opened up some time to do some questions from the group. I see there's a lot of activity in the give me a second here. I'm gonna stop my share. Whoa, feedback. We've got some activity here. Let's see what kind of questions we've got here from the group. All right, so can we use RUM with languages other than the Java agent? Yes, RUM is the JavaScript side of it. So if the JavaScript's interacting with Python or Django or Node.js, the languages are still supported in that space. What exactly does the machine learning job detect? So our machine learning is anomaly detection on time series data. And so it's a metric, and in this case with APM, the metric that we're focused on is the response time of the particular web method or the particular service call that's being made. And that's an anomaly detection. I think it's I think I mentioned it earlier, it's a score based on how often we've seen it, the patterns we would detect, some periodicity, and then we score that from 1 to 100. But with APM menu or the APM UI, we see that vertical bar when it's above 75. Let's see, can we have only one ML job per service? No, actually, see, we could break that down. So the service, what I showed was just an overall composite score, but we can break that down into those individual methods that we were showing in the UI. Please, is APM available in Elastic Cloud? Not yet. We are working on it. It is something that is coming, I'd say, probably on a short-term roadmap. Actually, the same. Yeah. When is the job APM scheduled for GA? So we're in beta now. We're aiming to have a release this year for the agent for production. And I would encourage you to go back out to that link, that our GitHub repository, and if there's something that you'd like to see changed or would like to some feedback or just making the product all around better, please feel free to submit some issues within that repo. Does Java APM detect internal calls? The Java agent collects spans for things like JDBC and outgoing HTTP requests. So those are the things that you would put in there. Now, there is some documentation on how to create custom spans and custom transactions that you can develop and put into the code. Right now, the approach is to do no modifications to the code. So the Java agent is just going to be inspecting the code as it loads through the pre-main methods, if you're familiar with the Java agent facility, to be able to do all that in there without doing any code changes. Is Spring Boot Reactive supported now or still on the roadmap? It's not supported yet and will be after 1.0. It'll be added. I'm sorry. It'll be added after 1.0. What is the best practices for handling multi-tenancy? For instance, I have two businesses. This is a really good question. So one of the patterns that I showed in one of the original slides the first slides, was you saw APM server going directly to Elasticsearch. If we wanted to, we could do special tagging. You could tag things and maybe put it through Logstash to add those tags. And those tags could be a particular customer. So let me see if I think I'm going to go back to a screen share if we can do that real quick here. I'm having a good example of this. Share. So we have a tag that's called customer tier. And that tag is based on how much they're paying us, right? And so I can start to filter down on that. So that's kind of a multi-tenancy. You just tag the data. It's still in that instance of the application because you think you want it centralized to one location, but you could tag the data in a way that would effectively give you the ability to parse out and say, how is customer $4 doing versus customer $3 or they're paying less, right? But then obviously you could do more searches based on request and response times, but that's really how you could use solution around being able to handle multi-tenant in that space. All right, I want to stop sharing again here. There we go. Let's see. Customer parallel. How about Tomcat web apps? Tomcat is supported. There are a number. I think we have this on our website. There are a number of containers for Java that we are supporting, and Tomcat is one of them. Can we track a Java application that is running in a different Docker machine? Yes, you can do that. It's just connectivity to the APM server that needs to be in place. Any plans for APM Java agent for .NET? Yes, there are plans for .NET. We don't really have a release date yet on that, but we're working on that. It's definitely on our roadmap. I mean, it's probably one of the more popular languages in terms of number of developers, just like Java, and so it's definitely something we're going to be working on. What is the license required for integrations? So the alerting, the error screen where I showed you how you can set up alerts on that. So the alerting part is available in our gold subscription. And then for machine learning, it's available in our platinum. Let's see here. Okay, so can anomaly detection, let's see, only detects response times. In the UI for APM, yes, we're looking at response times. But if you have the Platinum subscription, you can go into the ML and create additional jobs based on whatever metrics that you're interested in terms of your APM data. Let's see what I'm looking here. What types of things. This is Elastic APM. Oh yeah, this is so does the Elastic APM support distributed tracing between multiple applications? Example, Node.js app making requests to a separate Java app. It's not yet, but we are working on it and will be released soon. Does APM support PHP, Symfony, or Drupal? We do not have a PHP agent yet. All right, is the roadmap of the Java agent, in parentheses, Spring Boot, to capture method invocation? We get that in New Relic. If that feature is not for the Java world, well, I'm sorry, is not in for the Java world, the value APM really diminished. So we currently don't support the invocation of auto instrumentation. You can add custom spans, as I mentioned earlier. This is fully open, so we've given documentation on our website on how to create their own spans and auto instrumentation. So it's not so closed that you couldn't do something if you wanted to inside of your Java app to start instrumenting that. How easy does it integrate with machine learning? So when you do get the Platinum subscription, it's available then in the UI, which is the features are there. And then the other question to that was, does it supervise learning or unsupervised? It is unsupervised learning. So it trains itself, it builds the model, and if it detects the anomalies based on more data that you feed it. Let's see. All right. Okay, so one of the questions is, can I monitor a specific log table from MS SQL? Not with APM, but maybe with Logstash or Beats would be a way to get that data into an index in Elasticsearch. And as I mentioned before, once you get that data in there, then it's a mix and match between the data that you'd be bringing in from those Beats or Logstash and the APM menu or the APM visualizations. Here's another one. Does the Java APM agent send JMX information? It does not. We do have Beats that will Joloquia. We have a Joloquia module that you could collect that information from and send that along. And at the same time, you could make a dashboard with that data along with the APM data that we're collecting. Let's see here. Yep. Lots of questions here. Give me a. Okay, what about the license? So there were two things that I showed that were not part of the basic subscription, and those were the machine learning and the alerts. But the UI, the APM server, the agents that you can download from elastic.co are all part of a basic subscription that doesn't require you to pay for anything. You can just download it and start using it today. And if you're interested in more information on subscriptions, you can go to elastic.co/subscriptions and take a look at the variations and what's offered in all of those. Okay, let me see. I think we'll grab one more question here. Let's see. Yeah, so does Java, that's the last question we'll go into today. Does Java APM will be able to monitor connection pool statistics? That's actually still like a Joloquia kind of integration. So the Java agent wouldn't have that. The Java APM would not have that. But you could do that integration with one of our Beats to grab that information. Can you monitor transactions? All right, I'll do one more. Let's see. Can I monitor transactions with Java APM client over several microservices? The first sends an HTTP request to another, and the second system can store its spans with the first. Yeah, again, this is a distributed tracing thing that we're working on and will be released soon. Okay, I think that's it for questions. All right. Once again, I think I'd like to thank everyone for the questions. I think if you want to stick around, that there's some folks that probably can answer a few more on the IRC chat. But I think we're done.